Okay, welcome back to the Investigative Journal on this October 12th, 2016 day on our calendar. I'm your host, Greg Anthony. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. You can listen to my show every evening from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's on First Amendment Radio. They also play the show at 11 a.m. Pacific Time. And if you can't get it there, go to my long-standing website at arcticbeacon.com. I had to have a laugh during my opening of the show here. My big dog Max, who, by the way, is a movie star, has been in a number of movies when he was younger, was sitting right next to me, and as soon as I start my radio show, he hightails it for the bedroom, and I guess he is tired of it. He listens to my replays, though. But anyway, I had to have a laugh over that. But my other dog, Moose, sits right here. She's a little bit more into what we talk about here on this show, and that's the Vatican-led New World Order. Oh, I've got a lot of things for you today. I want to talk about the petition I've started on the Tony Alamo Ministry. Also want to get back to Father Thomas Michel, Jesuit, who basically says that the Jesuits and radical Islam are the same, but he puts it in a little bit different terms. Oh, I also have a few comments on the presidential elections, or shall we call them selections, and a couple more things. And it's funny, though, when you think about the Vatican-led New World Order and all the subjects I just mentioned, they all seem to tie together somehow. And I'll talk about that as well. Now, I got an email the other day, and the person asked me, Greg, you're always talking about the Vatican-led New World Order. What do you do in your spare time? What do you do? What's your hobby? Hobby. I've never been much for hobbies, to be honest with you. Well, what I've been doing lately is following my Chicago Cubs. I wanted to mention this. Now, the reason I did that is I grew up near Wrigley Field and used to go to all their ball games. And the Cubs haven't won a World Series since 1908. And they're now in the National League Championship Series, which means they have to either defeat the Dodgers or the Washington Nationals, whoever gets to the championship series, to go on to the World Series. And then they're going to have to defeat either Cleveland or the Blue Jays, Toronto, who are in the American League Championship Series as we speak. But yesterday was crazy. They were up 2-1, down 5-2 in the ninth inning. And I shut it off. I remember shutting it off. I said, here we go again. They had just lost a game the day before in the 13th inning, and it was 6-5. The Giants won it, and I said, here we go. They were still up 2-1, but I had that dreadful feeling because over all the years I've watched so many things happen to derail them, even a chance to get to the World Series, crazy things that have happened, and everybody's come up with the curse of the Billy Goat. And you'd have to look into that. And the Cubs haven't won a World Series in over 100 years. So I said, here we go again. And so when I looked at the scoreboard at 5-2 in the bottom of the eighth, I said, forget about it. And guess what? I couldn't help. I didn't want to watch. Can't watch. I get so tired of the Cubs losing important games, even though they won 103 games this year. I turned it off, but then something said turn it on, and then I watched the most amazing. God has miracles. Well, I'll tell you, this was one, because the Cubs scored 4 runs in the top of the ninth, won the division series with the biggest comeback in the history of baseball in the ninth inning. No team in the playoffs, World Series, any of these has ever come back from with 4 runs in the ninth. Miracles do happen. And let's go into the next miracle God's going to do. He's going to get Tony Alamo out of jail, as sure as I'm sitting here today. And one day I was walking in the park, and I said, what more can I do? I've been covering this story for 10 years. I know the man's innocent. I've watched the Vatican-led New World Order step on a lot of the people in the ministry, take their children, take their property. I said, what more can I do? And I guess I was just asking God. And then all of a sudden that day I got the idea. I sat down and put this petition together. And we've gotten, in over a week, we've gotten a lot of signatures and so many great comments from people. And you can go to that petition site. You can get it if you go to alamoministries.com, and they'll have a little link to go to it. You can go to another thing I started, the freeTonyAlamo.com website. Go there, freeTonyAlamo.com. And also you can get some t-shirts there that have Free Tony Alamo on it, some hats, mugs, or hoodies, and wear the hat, Free Tony Alamo. And so that's the next miracle that's going to happen, because it will be a miracle if you've understood how this government, how this rigged system, as Donald Trump would say, has put him behind bars and tried to destroy a perfectly good Christian ministry. There is no freedom of speech in this country. There's no freedom of religion. So go to that petition, sign it, have 10 of your friends sign it. And I want to thank a gentleman by the name of Robbie, who has helped me put that website together. And in fact, he wrote me today and said, Greg, I want to do an article on the 10 things people can do to free Tony Alamo and help him get out of jail. So he's going to do that, put it on the site. And if you got some things you want to say, make some comments. If you email me at gregbeacon.com, I can also gregbeacon@gmail.com. And I'm available for speaking engagements at churches, community groups, to talk about this subject and much, much more regarding the Vatican-led New World Order. And I've had good response so far on that, so let's keep that rolling. Now, let me read this petition to you if you haven't heard it. I said this: Tony Alamo and his Christian ministry have been targeted for more than 40 years by the U.S. government agencies, including but not limited to the FBI, BATF, CIA, and IRS. Now, FBI informants have come forward with sworn testimony they were hired to frame Pastor Alamo for his biblical and political views. This sworn testimony was not allowed in his 2008 criminal trial for violations of the Mann Act, in which close examination of trial and appeal documents indicate a miscarriage of justice of the worst degree. Furthermore, the ministry has been falsely depicted as a cult by government officials and an orchestrated media campaign, we know how crooked the media is, of the ruling elite and Vatican-controlled powers in our government. And let me just say as a side here, I've been trying for years to show people how the Vatican is connected to our government officials, how they have an agenda to destroy this country. And in the beginning, people looked at me and said I was crazy. I don't have that many people saying that anymore. And over the years, I've had a great response from people who've contacted me and said thank you for opening my eyes to this. And that's all I really wanted to do, because you have to do the research yourself, and there's a lot of it. And then you got to weed out who are these controlled media agents that say they're fighting the Vatican when they're not, and all of these crazy people that I have to run into in my job. And I've run into all of them, let me tell you that. And if you ever want to know who they are, I've got them on my radio show. I told you, some of the big guys that are out there professing to give you the truth and not. Even on the alternative media. We know the mainstream. I came from the mainstream media. We know that's as crooked as a $3 bill. And in fact, right now, all they're trying to do is get Hillary Clinton selected as your next king or queen so that they can destroy borders. Hillary just came out and said her biggest dream is to have open borders, a hemispheric open borders, and open trade. So basically what she's saying is she wants to bring all the drug cartels, she wants to bring in all of these terrorist people into our country and destroy it, including ISIS. And she's done a good job so far, because we've talked about the hidden Trojan horse of Fetullah Gulen and their connection to the Jesuits as well as to Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, who brought them over. And if you've gone to a couple of my shows in the last couple of days, for years people send me emails about the Clinton hit list. How many people coincidentally commit suicide or die from a strange accident that are associated with the Clinton? And coincidentally, how many of them had some dirt on them that were either going to testify in court, etc., etc. And isn't it interesting? There are so many. I remember John Peeler, one of these FBI agents that was hired to frame Tony and wasn't allowed to testify at his trial, told me about all the guys he knew that were bodyguards of Clinton that had to, that were either aware of his sexual predator nature and ended up dead. I've presented a couple of shows, a couple of people, and putting these names together. It's incredible. And somebody emailed me and said, well, that can't be. 114 people have been killed around the Clintons. That's just not, doesn't sound, they can't do that. And I said, well, listen, don't get carried away. Let's just say this. Even if it was one, that's too much. So go and do the homework on that. It's an incredible story. So we could be putting in a serial killer into the White House. And boy, I'll tell you, ISIS was licking its chops, and so are the Jesuits, to get her there. Because, you know something, if something miracle happened, well, I hope the next miracle, outside of getting first the miracle was the Cubs, and I win in that game. The next miracle is going to be Tony getting out of jail, and the next one is going to be Trump winning. And I hope that happens, because at least he'll slow them down. And I really do hope there's some miracle. I hope that in their rigged elections that somebody touches the wrong button and gives Trump the victory, even though they've controlled all the votes for Hillary. Maybe God will come down and change it. And boy, we need it, because too many people have died from the Jesuits over the course of hundreds of years. It's an incredible story. And like I said in the beginning of the show, all of this ties together. And Tony was trying to teach people this back in the 80s, and that's why he's in jail now, or in prison. Now, our goal, is to have 82-year-old Pastor Alamo released from prison immediately. He's already served more than 8 years of a 175-year sentence for crimes he did not commit. And how many of these predator priests, how many of the, there was a woman just on the presidential, that came forward that the media won't even cover. Her name is Juanita Broderick. She was raped by Bill Clinton and then threatened, even worse, by Hillary Clinton, she says. And he's not in jail, but Pastor Alamo, who didn't do anything, and they had to use the Mann Act, which is a way of saying, it's an old 1919 law, some year around there, that was passed to stop predator trafficking of prostitutes by pimps. And just by crossing state lines, they could arrest them. That's what they used here. Just because Tony used to take people on bus trips, he had ministries in Arkansas and then in California, and they had to use this because they had no solid evidence of any kind of sexual abuse. And then the 4 or 5 girls, imagine this, over 40 years they can only come up with 4 or 5 people. Now we know the litany of people that Bill Clinton has either raped or sexually abused. It's, according to people that some of the bodyguards and John Peeler, it's in the hundreds and more. And that's what I told you a long time ago. Sexual predators have a long history of it. And I can tell you that over 40 years, all they came up with was 4 girls who lied, who they had to send to a government, it's kind of a quasi-government facility where they were coerced, promised favors, and that's the only way they could do it. So he's been framed, and we got Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, sexual predators themselves, who've done it 100 million, and they're in jail. They're not in jail. That's why Tony's going to get out, and that miracle's going to happen. Now, he's presently in poor condition. He's legally blind and needs proper medical care that he's not receiving at this present time. So the petition goes on to say, while the Obama administration has allowed illegal immigrants to run free on the streets, our same government has made an innocent Christian pastor a political prisoner simply because his views differ from those in power, both in government and on the pulpits. Now let me add something here. Maybe I should put in the petition a little bit about the Clintons. And also, I wanted to make it short and concise. But when you look at the situation here, and if you follow how there are these sanctuary cities that are all over our country, which means that if these illegal immigrants illegal aliens that came into this country were found guilty of crimes, they can receive sanctuary and can't be sent out of this country, so they roam the streets. And how many of these people, we've gotten stories of people from Mexico or other even southern, other countries that sneak through the border 2 or 3 times after they've been convicted of huge crimes and they're let out of jail. And it's in a crazy story. And the list of people in this country, girls, guys, that have been killed by these people is long. And Obama allows that. But he puts a Christian pastor in jail, him and his crime gang, the Clintons, and all of the people that work for them, because they're trying to destroy this country. Now listen, back to the petition. I'm a journalist and a radio host who has covered the Alamo story for more than a decade and view this case as a travesty of justice that must be corrected, since it shows clearly freedom of religion and speech do not exist in the U.S. if your views are contrary to those in power. And I say, please go to my long-running radio show archives at my website at arcticbeacon.com. You can get my shows at FirstAmendmentRadio.com. A lot of people do YouTubes. You can check them out. They're done. Everybody does YouTubes every day on my shows. Further information regarding this travesty of justice can be found at alamoministries.com. And also I put a link about FBI undercover agents' sworn testimony about how they were hired to frame Tony but weren't allowed to testify in court. There's much information. There's other information. I put links there on the petition. But please sign this thing and send it to all your friends. Loving, your friends worldwide. We got people signing from I don't know how many countries, everywhere. Ghana, Nigeria, you name it, India. They keep pouring in. And they're going to keep pouring in because people are starting to realize what's really happening in this country. And I know that we will get Tony out of jail now, or out of prison. Now, I mentioned Clinton here, and I was nice to him in this petition. But you can read the stories. I should add some things about the people that have accused Clinton of rape and all of his sexual abuse, and he never spent one day in prison because he's protected by this crime family. And how many people have the Jesuits killed over the years, and they're still allowed to have universities, and never the truth comes out about the founding of our country and what really was going on, and never the truth comes out about the Protestant Reformation and all the Christians that were killed and what they're doing today and how they are actually helping ISIS along with the Clintons. Now, former President Clinton could release, and I just brought this up because that always bugged me, this story, the biggest tax evader in U.S. history, Mark Rich. What a criminal he was. And the last thing Clinton did before he got out of office was to release this guy. I pray authorities at the state and federal level will see the hypocrisy here and release this innocent pastor. Also, after signing, please take a look at the insightful YouTube video about the true nature of the Alamo ministry. I've got that there too. You can just click on it, 6-7 minutes, and it tells you really what they're like. So go, please, to that petition. And let's see if we can help to get Tony out of prison. Yes, Okay, I did want to go over a little bit of his story here. Now, I've been covering this story a long, long time, and we've talked over and over about the raid, which took place in September of 2008. And at that time, they were going to arrest Tony for a violation of the Mann Act, or they were looking also for pornography, which they didn't find. But he wasn't even there, and they knew it. He was in Los Angeles, and the authorities should have known. They decided to make a big media spill, though, by alerting over 50 Arkansas and nationwide news outlets the day before the raid. They had this guy convicted even before he was put in jail. They have been trying to bring this for Tony down in this ministry for 45 years, simply because I believe he's been criticizing the Vatican and our government officials, telling the truth, folks, for years, trying to alert you to their power in the secular and spiritual world. They also didn't like, oh look, on top of this, they don't want anybody talking about the Bible and then stating that the Vatican is the Antichrist in the book of Revelations, just like the Protestant reformers did. The supposed people that Protestants respect. But you look at Protestantism in this country, it's nothing but Catholicism, and Catholicism is pagan. I know, because I was a Catholic. Now, they succeeded in putting him in prison for false IRS charges years before. And that, to me, was always like a message. Listen. And they rigged that. I mean, I talked about that. I mean, it was so obvious. They broke into his store where he used to sell clothing to support people and to feed people and to support people of his ministry. And they stole all his books. So when they said he was violating some IRS bogus laws, he didn't have any way to defend himself. And they even proved that. But that didn't matter, because it's a kangaroo court. There's no justice when you're fighting against these people. You know, they hired numerous FBI agents to investigate him and bring him down, but they couldn't find anything on him over the years, and I've talked to a number of them. I also got into covering his trial. And listen, I'm still not through with that. I mean, I go through it, and piece by piece, and I can't believe that they even call that a trial. And I have a law degree, so I have a little bit of information and knowledge of the legal system. And as I tell you, when they want you to go down, you will go down. I mean, it's rigged. It's a rigged system. Now, with the part of the during this raid, they came in and they took 6 little girls. And then there was a court order on November 8, 2008, in which 20 more children or 30 more children were kidnapped. Let me check the time here. Literally kidnapped. I mean, from their parents. And eventually, about 37, 38 were taken into custody. Now, amazing. And they were being treated. There was never any abuse found. How can they do this? They can do anything they want, folks, when you have a system like this that is so corrupt. And it ain't going to get better with Hillary Clinton now. That's why all this stuff is together. If everybody understood this stuff and it all works together, Clinton would be in jail and Tony would be free. That's the way it should be. But anyway, I got to break it off there. And don't forget to go to that petition site. Go to freeTonyAlamo.com and you can click on a link there to sign the petition. It'll take you to the petition site. And I'll be back in 3 minutes with the second half of the investigative journal. See you then.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit DiscountGoldandSilverTrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit DiscountGoldandSilverTrading.net. or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie, with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character, as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy, in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org. The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today, so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Okay, we are back for the second half hour, and I ended that first half hour by talking about the children that were basically kidnapped by the state because they want to bring this ministry down when there were no abuse charges ever found. And then I started thinking, I said, why don't these agents do this to Catholic schools and take children from them, the parents, take their children, if they continue going to the Catholic school after the Monsignor and other priests have been found to abusing all these kids. Why didn't they close down their churches, take their land? When we know about the molestations, the thousands that go on, hundreds and thousands that go on all over the world with these priests. But that's hushed up. And the kids don't get taken from their parents, so there's this double standard here. But why did it happen here with the Alamo ministry? I believe that not only did they want to bring Tony down, but they wanted to destroy the ministry and take its property, and basically it's basically against the Word of God. Nothing more. It's like the Inquisition. It's right here. Now, the Los Angeles Times ran a story entitled "Ministry's Compound Raided by FBI and Police," stating FBI agents and state police raided an evangelist's headquarters as part of a child pornography investigation, and social workers interviewed children, etc., etc. So they call it a compound. Why don't we call St. Mary's Church a compound or a cult? Because you really want to know the truth, the biggest cult in the world is the Catholic Church, run by the Vatican. Now, the reason they do it is they want to taint the minds of people that'll believe anything they see in these crooked newspapers. And there was never any child pornography. And these social workers that worked on these kids, they were more like interrogators of the Third Reich. And we know about that. I've had Deborah Andrasak, other members of the ministry, who talk about their children being taken away. And I've got that documented. There's even people that have taken my story and they've they have put a, if you want to read it, you can find it, Deborah Andrasek's testimony. People have transcribed it as she told it on my show. And basically that's what it was. These social workers were like Third Reich, Nazi interrogators. Hey, there was no point. They didn't even take the ministry's computers. This is all a fraud. There was nothing on them. They went through the houses in the ministry like they were some kind of criminals. Why don't they go through Clinton's house? The real criminal. That was a big lie. All of it used to taint the public against this man in the ministry. The next day they print a story entitled, and you know what? After that raid, I called Fauq, Arkansas, where they lived. And not to a T, we had 3 or 4 people I had calling, all the businesses and people in Fauq, and said, what do you think of that Tony Alamo ministry? And they echoed every word that was said on the news. And that just goes to show you, they had no idea who these people were and how the news media frames people's minds. And they do it all the time. What a bunch of crooks. And so anyway, the next day they print a story entitled 6 Minors in State Care After Raid. It reads, 6 minors have been placed in temporary custody as part of a 2-year-old child abuse and pornography investigation. What lies. These stories were in every major newspaper across the country. Do you think he ever had a chance? This was no child abuse. There was no pornography. They didn't even bother taking the computers. And then they had stories like Arkansas doesn't return girls. There's another article 2 days later stating 6 girls removed from the evangelical commune now as part of an investigation into possible sexual abuse of minors will remain in state custody for the near future. You know what the near future's been? Many of these children never have been returned. Another story comes out. Officials seize 20 more youths. Another one, parents told to cut Alamo ties. Parents are told not to get involved. Now, remember we had Bert Krantz comes on my show all the time. He mentioned that when he was at all the trials, the investigators came up to him and the prosecutor or the people in charge of the case said, if you lie about Tony, we'll give you your children back tomorrow. What's that all about? I mean, this thing, that's why I call it worse than a kangaroo court. Parents are told, don't get involved in the church. Get away from the church. Whenever did the state have the right to express and tell you what religion you can be involved in? Here's one that came out in 1985. This is way back. Here's another one. I found this one. This is interesting. Burbank officials looking for a source of anti-Catholic posters being glued to public property. It begins like this. Burbank officials said Wednesday they are trying to pinpoint the source of hundreds of anti-Catholic propaganda posters. Propaganda. No, it's not. They're true. That have appeared glued to public property in their city and elsewhere in Los Angeles during the last month. The posters charge the Roman Catholic Church with secret ownership of print in electronic news media and manipulation of government agencies, wording similar to leaflets distributed by Tony and Susan Alamo Christian Ministry Foundation. So now, back in 1985, this story appeared. Tony was already telling you the truth. That's the truth. And they make it out to be propaganda. But let me tell you something. He's telling you the exact truth. During that period of time when he's doing this here, I'm over in Rome working as a journalist, and I can verify everything he's saying is true. And these officials, now you know why he's in prison. These officials were trying to cover it up. They want to shut Tony up. That's all they've been wanting to do because of his stance, because of his preaching the Bible and teaching people the truth about this Vatican-led New World Order. Now, what I wanted to do, and you can go and look at the petition, and I'll do many more shows on this as the days and weeks go by. But I did want to finish the show with some comments about what we were talking about yesterday, and the real danger to this country, which to me is basically infiltration from within, and also the threat of Islamic terrorism and wars from abroad. And you have to really put it all together, and you can't leave out the Jesuits and the Vatican. And years ago, when I was, now let's be clear. If we look at the coup in Turkey, and I've done shows on this, so I'm going to make it brief. The coup in Turkey was orchestrated by the CIA, Jesuits included, to topple Erdogan, to topple the more secular element of Islam. Turkey's a bit different than the other Islamic countries in that, just for a lack of a better term, they're more secular and they're more moderate. They haven't been founders of Sharia law. That's my doggy here, wanting to go by. Or maybe he's saying, isn't your show done yet? Okay, yeah, he wants to go for a walk, and I told him, got about 15 more minutes, so you'll just have to wait, Max. All right, so we have this coup in Turkey orchestrated by the CIA, the government, to topple probably what I call firewall, to stop radical Islam and Sharia law. But little did we know that Fetullah Gulen, who's now sitting, he's an imam, an ayatollah. He spreads radical Islam, although they tell you he's this moderate. He sits in the Pocono Mountains here. He's a millionaire, a billionaire. He's got funding from the American people, our great government here, to start over 150 of these Islamic schools. And this is not just here, but worldwide. So he had infiltrated Turkey years ago. In '99, he was brought over here by, guess who? The Clintons. And you can bet they got their dirty little hands in all of this money. And they support this guy. They're supporting radical Islam. That's exactly what it is. And so when Erdogan, the leader of Turkey, found out about the coup and avoided death by seconds, it's amazing. He maybe that was one of God's miracles too, so we could learn the truth. He then survived. The American newspaper started saying, well, now he's putting in jail all these dissidents. Really, they were all Gulen movement people that were put in there to destroy the more moderate Turkish government so that they could break down and just create this ISIS movement all over the Middle East and then bring it here, destroy our military base there. And that is very important for strategic means to keep an eye on what's going on in the Middle East and protect Israel. So you can see what the Clintons and the Jesuits had in mind here with Gulen. So what happens to Gulen? I was talking about him years ago when I learned about what he was doing in places like Norway, Sweden, other parts of Europe. The same thing, starting these schools and then basically teaching Sharia law, Islam. It's a way to infiltrate a country through the means of education, just like the Jesuits do. So we've done numerous stories on Gulen. He's still being protected. Erdogan that's the leader of Turkey, said, okay, you have to turn over this traitor Gulen that you're protecting, and he knows he's a CIA asset now. And originally Obama refused, and then Kerry said, okay, we will, but it's going to take time. They're never going to release him. He knows too much. He'll either disappear or be killed, and life will go on as normal. Somebody will take over for him. But he's never going back to Turkey to spill the beans about his connections to the Clintons and all that. But that's really what's going on. So we're talking about that Clinton connection and how they were really basically funding ISIS. There's so many stories coming out about arms dealers now talking about how they had to bypass certain things in Congress so they could get the arms and the military money and arms into the hands of ISIS rebels. Incredible stories. And how anybody could put this woman in office and people could believe her. And I listened to people supporting her. It's incredible. Just crazy. But people then emailed me and said, okay, now here you go again, Greg. You're going to connect the Jesuits. And I said, yeah, we already did that 10 years ago, when we talked about a priest, the Jesuit priest, who works together with the Gulen movement, who is spreading radical Islam in a very, very deceptive way. His name is Father Thomas Michel, Jesuit priest. And I had to dig up an article. An article came before me that proves it. And how he explained, Thomas Michel, this Jesuit priest, wrote this in support of Gulen. He said the Gulen Hizmet community and the Jesuits are very much alike. And he said in a speech and in an article he wrote, this is Thomas, listen how they talk here. The topic that I will speak about today is the Gulen community and the Jesuits. This is Thomas Michel, a Jesuit. So I'm telling you, when I make a connection to the Jesuits, the Clintons, and Gulen, it's all right here. And I'm asked to note some points of comparison. I should mention at the beginning that 2 scholars have already independently treated this topic. One of those studies has been published. It is the paper prepared by Michael David Grasskemper, a young American scholar at Harvard University, and was delivered at the International Conference, Muslim World in Transition, Contributions of the Gulen Movement. See, all of this stuff is backwards. Guess what Mr. Grashammer's paper was entitled, says Thomas Michel, the Jesuit priest. A Bridge to Interreligious Cooperation. The Gulen Jesuit Educational Nexus. Well, they got one thing right. Gulen and the evil Jesuits work together, but not in the terms of bringing people together for good. They want to destroy it from within by using radical Islam. What are they doing over in Middle East now? The Sunnis are killing the Shia. It's going back and forth. Muslims are killing Muslims. And then they're going to pit Muslims against Christians. And that's called the Hegelian dialectic. And they control both sides so they can get their end game. A lot of people killed, and then they can have the whole world go, oh, we need your help. Save us. And then the one world government and the one world religion come into being. Now, these papers, they talked about things in glowing terms. I'm saying this today. He says, I want to take up a more general topic, says Thomas Michel, this traitor Jesuit priest, being more broadly informative. He says, if I were giving this talk in the United States, I would feel that I should begin by introducing the audience to the background works of the Gulen movement. And I could presume that the participants already knew much about the Jesuits. You know something? Don't presume. Many people, I go out and I ask, people don't know who you really are. They don't, the ones that do have already listened to your lies about all of your great educational things and what you want to do to help people in the country. So, Mr. Thomas Michel, many people don't even know you exist, and that's by your own design, because you can get away with more. And 2, the only thing they hear about you are all your lies about all your good things that you do. Now, here's how the Jesuits are depicted to 99.9% of Americans that even know about them. I would say that most people don't even know about them, and they like it both ways. Listen to this garbage. He says the Jesuits are a Catholic religious order founded 470 years ago in 1541. Well, it was. Okay, he's right there. The proper name of the community is the Society of Jesus. And the name Jesuit, which was originally disparaging, stuck and is today the usual name for the community. The Jesuits were inspired by the life and writings of Ignatius of Loyola, a Spanish soldier who underwent a deep spiritual conversion and devoted the rest of his life to the service of God. Ignatius lived, what God? That's the question. Ignatius lived at the time of the Protestant Reformation. Now listen how they twist this around when many people were leaving the Catholic Church to join Protestants. The Protestant reformers believed that the Catholic Church was too corrupt and wanted to found a new Reformed church. But Ignatius and his companions worked to renew and reform the Catholic Church from within, and to invite nominal Christians to a deeper, transformed commitment to their faith. Wow. Now, if that isn't a bunch of lies, twisted facts about the Jesuits, if you really want to know what they were about, that's just the opposite. That's not the way it is, folks. That's what they tell you. I've been listening to their lies my whole life, because I grew up as a Catholic. Now, he gets into some little things. Ignatius proposed 2 main instruments of renewal. Jesuits must go through 30 days of spiritual exercises, as well as 8 days of spiritual renewal every year. The second instrument of renewal is education, the founding of schools and universities in every major city in Europe, as well as North and South America, Asia, and Africa. In the United States, for example, there are 28 Jesuit universities and over 40 high schools, 5 universities in the Philippines, 8 in Brazil. And in India, there are over 100,000 students in Jesuit schools of higher education. And guess who he praises? He says, in this vision, that education is about more than simply communicating information, we can find an appropriate opening to a comparison with the schools of the Islamist Fetullah Gulen movement. And like Ignatius Loyola, Mr. Gulen has a broader vision that's simply to run a school system. He wants to change the world and make it better, more just, in a peaceful place. He wants to serve society by producing a new generation of students who are well prepared scientifically and who are instilled with the ideas to use their educational preparation for the common good rather than for our own selfish comfort. Compare this vision of the Fetullah Gulen movement with the mission statement of Georgetown University, the Jesuit university in Washington, D.C. This was the earliest Jesuit university in the United States, dating back to 1789, and has produced many of the academic, political, religious, and economic leaders of the United States. Georgetown's mission statement reads as follows, and boy, is that a bunch of garbage. But he does say something here that if you read between the lines and you understand the truth about the Jesuits, the truth about why Georgetown is there, their long-standing goal to overthrow this country, to take it over from within. They're not doing good. They, on the outside, do good things. On the inside, they have a diabolical plan. And boy, have we documented that on this show. Now, an interesting thing here is he's connecting himself to the Gulen movement. And Thomas Michel 10 years ago was doing that in Europe. He was doing the same thing. And what about the reports that we're getting about Gulen, who he really is, the reports I got 10 years ago, that this man has been brought here to spread Sharia law and to bring from within a downfall of Western civilization. That's what Georgetown hopes in the future too. They work together. Now, they have one policy that they tell their insiders, and all of the stuff I was reading to you is what they tell people on the outside. So they have 2 different positions. One for the catechumen like us and the Goya, and one for the insiders in the secret societies and all of their minions in government like Obama and the Clintons and etc., etc. Now, what's also interesting in these WikiLeaks tapes, or these WikiLeaks emails coming out on a daily basis now, these email dumps showing the true nature of the Clintons and all of their crime family members. One email stated Clinton was giving a speech for $250,000 to some big banking group, and she said, you must have a public policy and a private policy. The same thing that is happening here with Gulen and Thomas Michel and the Jesuits. So where do you think she got that from? She tells one thing to people in private, another to us. What that means to me is they're all liars, plain and simple. Now, when you follow the elections going on right now, you're going to find that there's a stark division between Clinton, the globalist, and Trump, the nationalist. He's got to go this far. He's getting deeper than I've seen any candidate in the history of this country go. And I got to give him a little credit for that. But there's so much more he can say. Now, whatever side he's on, let's say just out of give the man the benefit of the doubt he's on the good side, there's things he can't say. And the reason is that just like me, when I first started telling you the truth about the Jesuits, people looked at me like I was some kind of traitor, that this guy's a conspiracy theorist, and this guy isn't an American. So people maybe that are in political positions that want to change it can't, because they realize the majority of people will not believe them. There's a fine line here. Abraham Lincoln had to make that same, he had to draw that fine line too when he knew a lot of things. And that's an interesting story. So there's a lot that we can learn from news stations like this and others who preach the truth about the Jesuits. And that's why I think everything's changed now. It's basically the social media against the corrupt mainstream media. And social media now, there's so much good out there that can be found. You just got to weed through all the bad stuff, so to speak. I'm all out of time. Wish I could go on longer today, but come back tomorrow. We have another show on the Investigative Journal. See you tomorrow.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.